December 20, 1987. This is the date the world experienced the greatest maritime disaster in peacetime history. MV Doña Paz, a steel-hulled liner built in 1963, was owned by Sulpicio Lines, one of the 7 major companies controlling the majority of the shipping industry in the Philippines. With a declared capacity of 1,518 passengers, it carried 4,341 passengers along with 60 crew members from Tacloban, Leyte to Manila. At about 10:30 p.m., the ferry was along Tabla Strait when it collided with an oil tanker, MT Vector. Traveling from Bataan to Masbate, the MT Vector was carrying 9,000 barrels of gasoline, kerosene, and crude oil while being manned by 13 crew members. The collision caused the MT Vector to spill its petroleum cargo and ignite on the water. MV Don Claudio saw the collision and went to the crash site, rescuing 26 survivors. 16 hours after the collision, the Philippine Coast Guard, along with the Air Force, conducts its search and rescue operations. No one besides the 26 was found alive.
This leads to the question, what really caused the collision of MV Doña Paz and MT Vector? Let us see using the root cause analysis. We will use 4 of the 6 M's: man, method, materials, and machine. For man, there were unqualified crew on both MV Doña Paz and MT Vector. The engineers in MV Doña Paz were unlicensed, and the spotter on MT Vector, who reads and spots the signal of ships near them, was unqualified. MT Vector's acting captain was only qualified as a second mate. Eyewitnesses and survivors said that there was drinking in both ships. They also claimed that the crew in Doña Paz are partying with the captain with them, leaving the apprentice to handle the ship. During the day of the incident, MV Doña Paz took in 4,341 passengers, almost 3 times more than its declared capacity of 1,518.
For methods, the poor handling of the situation by the Philippine Rescue Coordination Center hampered rescue efforts after the incident. It took the Philippine Rescue Coordination Center 16 hours to mobilize the Philippine Coast Guard and conduct search and rescue operations. The lack of government enforcement of maritime safety regulations for ships had also contributed to the accident. Both ships would not have been allowed to sail if the enforcement of safety inspections were implemented, as they both had multiple regulation violations. The MT Vector should have been deemed unseaworthy as it had an expired radio permit and a defective steering mechanism, while overloading in the Doña Paz was caused by illegal ticket selling and boarding passengers without tickets. Crew procedures were also faulty, as the crew left life vest lockers locked, rendering them inaccessible during the incident. For materials, an under-equipped, undermanned, and underfunded Philippine Coast Guard resulted in sluggish and inadequate search and rescue operations after the incident. This resulted in a lack of ships and rescue equipment. This forced the Philippine Coast Guard to rely on civilian vessels for the majority of search and rescue efforts, which limited search and rescue operation capacity.
For machine, the radio of MT Vector was defective, and its license had been expired for 18 months. It also had a defective steering mechanism, which made it harder to steer away from the Doña Paz. Because of this defect, it requires 2 people to steer instead of 1. Doña Paz's age and lack of maintenance also presented questionable seaworthiness. After we have analyzed the causes of the incident, we have concluded what the root cause is. The root cause is the government's apathy for the marine industry. First, the guidelines are lenient for crew, ship, and equipment qualifications, allowing the ship to sail with unsatisfactory qualifications and crew members. Rescue operations also lacked funding, preventing them from mobilizing faster to tend to disasters. Lastly, There were no strict policies, regulation, and standards for the maritime industry at that time.
Recommendations: to decrease the likelihood of future accidents similar to the MV Doña Paz tragedy, the government should attend more attention to the Philippine maritime transport industry. The government should enact stricter regulations for vessel seaworthiness sailings in the Philippines. This is to ensure that all ships are made to comply with sufficient safety, maintenance, navigational tools, and seaworthiness regulations to prevent similar incidents. The government should also ensure the proper enforcement of these maritime rules and regulations to ensure that ships which are deemed unseaworthy are not permitted to sail. Crew training and qualifications should also be properly enforced to ensure ship crews comply with existing operational and safety standards. Finally, the government should allocate increased funding for the Philippine Coast Guard. An increase in funding would allow the Philippine Coast Guard to acquire more ships, trained personnel, and equipment, enhancing search and rescue capacities.